Varmt välkomna som sagt till Statistikfrämjandets digitala årskonferens. And now let's switch it over to English and please welcome Dr. Walter Radermacher. It is truly an honor to have you with us today. Dr. Walter Radermacher is the Director General, the President of FENStatS, the Federation of European National Statistical Societies. He has a long record of being the Director General for Eurostat and also the Chief Statistician for the European Union from 2008 to 2016, and has for 30 years worked with the German Federal Statistical Office, ultimately as its President and Federal Returning Officer. We are very thrilled to have you with us, Dr. Radermacher. And as you know, you got a question from Joachim Stumne that we hope that you will answer during your presentation. The question, as you see on the screen, is Dr. Radermacher. We have for many years been talking about how AI, big data, etc. have triggered a data revolution. But when do you think we will go through a statistical revolution? With that, I would like to welcome Dr. Walter Radermacher.
Okay, good morning. Sorry for not speaking Swedish. As a person working in the European Union institution, I should speak all the languages, but this is hard. So for the moment, I speak a German dialect, proper German, and French and English. So sorry for not speaking Swedish.
That's perfect.
So, but I know that the Swedish people speak excellent English, much better than I do, probably. So let me share my screen. Where am I? Here.
Should be able to do so. There you go.
Excellent. So you can see my PowerPoint.
Yes, it looks perfect. And
okay. And I promise I will come back to the question I was given. A simple question. The answer is not that easy, but I think my presentation as a whole will give the answer to the question by Joachim Stumne. I have titled my presentation Products, Processes, and Governance. And here, as you will see, I start with products. So my main intention is to start the discussion from a different angle and an angle which is normally not the starting point for discussions. Normally in the question of statistical revolution, modernization of statistics, big data and so forth, we focus on processes and methods. But I take a different starting point and I will come to different endpoints and results, as we will hopefully see. Let me see. Now I'm here. Okay, so by coincidence, this year, 2020, World Statistics Day, is connecting the 200-year celebration of a very famous person called Florence Nightingale, who was, one would say, the mother of modern nursing, and she was one of the pioneers of modern statistics, as we can see here in the diagram of causes of mortality from the Crimean War in the mid of the 1850s. Why do I mention her? Not only because she puts a focus on health and health statistics, mortality, but because she has incorporated in her work the three dimensions of good statistics. So she firstly was an empirical worker. She was collecting data in a very systematic manner. She developed new methodologies and new methods to communicate statistics. So she was working in theory, statistical theory. And thirdly, she was very close to a field of application. And this, I think, is the three aspects which altogether play a role for having good statistics, namely consistency with theory, high quality data and facts and measurement, and thirdly, high relevance for a field of application and the questions therein. Now, what are the questions of our time? And here you see this cartoon with climate change asking the little COVID, who's your agent kid? And I think this speaks to us, explaining what my main message will be. We are currently going through a crisis which is perceived as a big, big, big shock, but the maybe even bigger shock is still waiting in front of us in the near future. Now, the structure of my talk will go through the questions of statistical quality, as I have explained, the what, statistical products, the how, and the who. Now, in the at the end of the Cold War, a new form of governance for statistics was introduced, and we see here the main building points, the UN Fundamental Principles and the European Statistics Code of Practice. Both of them, the intention was to put up a kind of governance system for official statistics, protecting official statistics, guaranteeing that the products are of highest possible quality, that institutions can work independent, and so forth. So this was the solution of statistical governance at that time. And I think we have achieved really a lot by, in particular in Europe, by improving statistical products tremendously over the last 20, 30 years with the help of this governance system and modern statistical management tools. The beginning of this was also linked to a meeting I remember quite well in Statistics Sweden in Stockholm, where a leadership group of the European statistical system was founded with the help of Statistics Sweden. So thank you very much again for this pioneering work at the end of the 1990s. Now, my talk will go through these three dimensions, the what, the how, and the who, and let me go without further ado directly to the what. So the main question is, what kind of statistical information is needed? But firstly, we have to understand what is statistical information. And my main sentence is, facts are products. Data are given, facts are produced. And just to highlight, my main message is highlighted by the two quotations by Norbert Wiener: the best material model of a cat is another or preferably the same cat, or the famous quote of Korzybski, the map is not the territory. What would I like to say is that we have to bear in mind that whatever we do in statistics, we are dealing with models, pictures, mirrors of reality. So we have to do with conventions, translation of reality into much smaller pictures, and an awareness that this is the case is the starting point also for good statistical work. And the way we do this is a kind of reducing complexity. In a first step, we go from data to facts. So we take the raw materials, or we produce raw materials, we go through basic statistics, we create national accounts, and then we come to high aggregated indicators. And from that, a second step starts outside of official statistics, where knowledge is produced and decisions are made eventually. So if we bear this in mind, so a kind of reduction machinery, where we reduce a very, very complex reality to some very simple and clear facts. And we lose information on that way, and we have to keep this in mind all day long. Now, coming to the what, in front of us, we have to deal with risk, transformation of society processes, and uncertainty. Looking towards the next decade, towards 2030, is something different versus short-term crisis management as we currently do with COVID. And I would like to explain this just quoting a couple of international reports. And the first is this one, the World Economic Forum report on global risks. This one, the Global Risk Report 2020. So each year, the World Economic Forum asks the leaders of economies of this world, what kind of risks are ahead of us? How is the impact and what is the likelihood of risks? And in a similar way, these reports from the Stockholm Institute on the left side, from the socialist group in the European Parliament, from the ILO, the International Labour Organization, or from the OECD, a report where I had the pleasure to be in the group of authors around Joe Stiglitz, all of them come to similar foresights of the near future. And this is the picture from the World Economic Forum. On the left side, the epsilon axis, you see the impact of risks, and on the horizontal axis of this map, you see the likelihood. On the upper right quadrant, here, a little bit zoomed in, you see what the world economic leaders have perceived in 2020 or in 2019 for 2020 as the highest risky, let's say, future events which are waiting for us. It's climate action, it's extreme weather conditions, biodiversity loss, and so forth. So most of these perceived risks are in green because they are risks coming from changes of nature. And consequently, also the United Nations have developed a plan towards 2013, which is called the Sustainable Development Goals Plan. And statisticians have been asked how to cope with this plan in terms of statistics. Unfortunately, I must say, the answer was not, in my view, not very future oriented, because we have answered by putting on the table a kind of rigid framework of 231 indicators, which in my view is not a sufficient answer for the transformation process that's ahead of us. I will come back later to this. Now, the current crisis is this one. The picture of Johns Hopkins University from late September. Meanwhile, the situation has changed dramatically again. This is, of course, something which is blocking our orientation towards even bigger changes in the forthcoming future. So we are in such kind of a situation. We are boxing in the ring with this COVID crisis, while the climate change, biodiversity loss risks, which were perceived before the pandemic started, are waiting outside and observing what is going on the globe. So secondly, we are in a situation where we are split in a paradox situation where on the one side, we are talking about a data gold rush, and on the other side, the death of truth. And in this paradox situation, we can observe 3 or 4 different kind of revolutions. The first is the data revolution, as is expressed here in the Royal Statistical Society Manifesto. Data for better policy making, the driver of productivity and prosperity, and data to strengthen democracy and trustworthiness. This is number 1. The second one already has started in the 1980s. It is the revolution of decision-making based on evidence or informed by evidence. So which has created a kind of situation in audit society, and now we are not only augmenting decisions, but we are automating decisions by artificial intelligence, which brings us into a situation with a lot of ethical questions and social and political questions. For example, by the quotation of the famous Goodhart law, any observed statistical regularity will tend to collapse once pressure is placed upon it for control purposes. So there is a feedback loop between the evidence and policy making. In the extreme, one could say, instead of evidence-based policy making, we could fear that in some situations, evidence is, let's say, we have a policy-based evidence making. So in a snapshot, I found this interesting on a Saturday morning, then leading to the third revolution, facts are confusing me. So obviously, a certain share of our population becomes more and more skeptical vis-a-vis experts, technocrats, science, intellectualism, which has been also a kind of aspect of the discussion around the Brexit. And we can observe this also in the quotation of alternative facts or post-truth, and in the ongoing, preparation of the election in the United States. And the last revolution is the globalization revolution. So while we are still working in statistics in a very, close relationship and marriage with the nation state, all our statistical systems are dedicated to give answers to the questions within a nation state. All the risks have changed into global risks. Economies are working globally, global value and production chains, global players, and it's no longer, let's say, sufficient to give statistical answers from a purely national dashboard, while the risks are beyond the capacity of policy making and coping with the risks at national level. So in summary, we have a kind of data revolution, we have an evidence-based decision-making neoliberal revolution, we have a kind of post-truth revolution and a globalization revolution. These are four which we have to take into account before we come to the question that I was asked, the statistical revolution. Official statistics is also in a kind of two-sided conflict between, on the one side, the interest to include the big data, IoT, artificial intelligence opportunities, while the community here in the big data world is completely different in terms of ethics, quality perceptions. The one we in official statistics are part of the public sector, and we have a kind of public mandate, whereas the private players in big data, they are completely different in their mission and in their, let's say, perception of the world. And on the opposite side, we have civil society, which on the one hand is criticizing indicators coming from official statistics like GDP for not being complete and giving the wrong signals. And on the other side, we could expect from civil society also potentials for further cooperation and partnerships. So this is the kind of double-sided conflict of official statistics position nowadays. If we look back to the last 200 years, so to Florence Nightingale, we could distinguish four phases in official statistics. The first one in the 19th century, here in gray, very empirical, but with the first type of also modern theory based on mathematical methods. Then the first half of the 19th century, a lot of mathematical theory introduced by people like Pearson or Gini and so forth. The SNA was born. Then in the phase 3, the big computers were introduced. Now we are in a phase 4.0. So statistics 4.0 is my, my theme, my motto. I will come back to this later. Shortly on official statistics 3.0, at the end with verified facts, high quality, independent institutions. The factory of statistics is composed of 4 main processes. 3 of them within the factory, the design, the production, and the communication, and 1 outside, which is then the application of the information products in the world of the users. We have introduced quality management systems, basically applying modern quality management like the European Foundation of Quality Management model within the European Statistics Code of Practice, with a quality framework, peer reviews, and so forth and so forth. So we have done really a lot and achieved a lot of good quality. Now, what we have to bear in mind is also that statistics is a kind of learning, permanent learning and iteration towards the new data needs. And we have short-term learning cycles, the middle one, and we have long-term learning cycles. The long-term learning cycles, they partly take 10 to 15 years in order to change. So the last review of the system of national accounts has taken 15 years. In Germany, the change from an ordinary knock on the door population census to the last one has taken almost 20 years. So we are talking about a long lead time before the new products and the new production is really available and can be used outside. This, please keep in mind. Now we are coming to back to the situation now. What are the opportunities and challenges for official statistics 4.0 through digitization and globalization? The first is the modernization of processes. So what can we do in order to take in the opportunities of big data? And there we are talking about trusted smart statistics, systemic augmentation of official statistics from traditional sources to the inclusion of new data sources. So this is a new business architecture, which is a kind of factory which starts from different angles and at the end is assembling in a very systematic and intelligent, smart way the process together in order to produce statistical products. So push computation out, multi-purpose data sources, and a layered modular organization are the keywords. The second angle is localization. So globalization and localization together. So as I said, we are not working now under a very strong national statistics paradigm. Within one period, within the, let's say, administrative regions of a country and with the resident population. However, on the other side, the Irish GDP in 2015 was pushed up by 26.3% through the move of one multinational player from outside the European Union to Ireland. And this is, now I will jump over a couple of slides. This is the starting point for rethinking how official statistics could really reflect and quantify the situation of multinational players and of groups of, let me just quickly go through this. So a comprehensive framework of international trade statistics with integration of services and international input-output tables, trade-in value added, and so forth. So these are the new products that we have to produce and new processes by profiling, for example, where Statistics Sweden, for example, would profile global economic players which have their headquarters in Sweden, also for colleagues outside of Sweden. So sustainable development, globalization, regional disparities, and migration all ask for solutions which are no longer within the national statistics paradigm. The last part of my talk will now go to the who, data for policy and retour. So we have to go beyond the modernization of processes. And here, in a simple way and a little bit provocative, I have put this diagram on together. On the left side, you see a change from government-centric statistics to citizen-centric statistics. So they have the citizen in the focus. And on the horizontal axis, from data-driven to mission-oriented. Now, I think we have done a lot in official statistics 3.0 to become more open, citizen-centric, and also to be more mission-oriented. But what I would believe is that we have to do much, much more in the future, really to open that official statistics is citizen-centric and is mission-oriented, and that we are no longer only looking at the processes, but that we have to ask ourselves, what kind of product do we have to produce for the time 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and so forth. To take citizens on board can be done by citizen science, by co-design of the products, by co-production of in the production lines, and by co-communication. This is altogether absolutely not easy. We have not much experience in neither of these new fields, and they have to be developed to be done in a professional and sound way. And this is really a completely new way of working with the partners in civil society. Secondly, I believe that a kind of diversification, branding, and labeling could help. Because take, for example, biodiversity. We have to work together in official statistics with new partners out there, partners in, for example, ecologists, people with remote sensing, just to set up a kind of new system where we can observe on a regular basis and monitor whether insects disappear and whether biodiversity is lost. And maybe we start with a small smart and not with a big Mercedes. And as long as we communicate that this small smart car is the best car that can be produced under conditions, I think it is better than to have no car at all. Almost last but not least is literacy. We have to invest much more into teaching statistics, that it becomes closer to the doing statistics afterwards, wherever it takes place. And we have seen the confusion in current times in COVID in the population, because they were not prepared to digest the statistical information they have received through the media, through TV, through their social media, and so forth. So there is a big lag in data literacy skills and education out there, and we have to invest in order to prepare a kind of culture which is receptive for good statistics and which can distinguish between high quality statistics. So in France, one would say the 3 étoiles Guide Michelin restaurant, and the cheap fast food burger provision restaurant around the corner. If citizens and society cannot distinguish in quality, high quality will be lost. So statistical literacy is something quite important. The very last one is governance. Of course, if we open up for new partnerships, and if we build these smart cars instead of the very expensive Mercedes car, then the question comes, how can we guarantee that this is still trustworthy? That we are not, how to say, jeopardizing our brand with its high quality. And then we have to go again through all these questions, namely, how can the institutions of statistics be independent, strong in terms of political relevance, and at the same time innovative? My personal impression is that we have created a lot of independence in the last 20, 30 years at the expense of innovativeness and flexibility. How can democracy can be used? By stronger participation of democratic groups, at the same time also control mechanisms which prevent that this, how to say, participation is misused from the wrong side. And last but not least is consistency between national and international statistical governance. That's it from my side. I hope I have given an answer to the question. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Radermacher. It was very, very interesting to see your view of how statistics will develop over the years. We are opening up for questions from the audience. We already have a few questions that have come in, so I'll fire right away. There's one from Marcus Persson. Marcus Persson. He says, regarding the facts confuses me. I believe that discussing facts between experts is harmful when it is done through mass media. Do you think that experts do that anyway because they seek fame or because there is a lack of better suitable channels to have those discussions in? What is your view, Dr. Radermacher?
Well, my view would be that there is a very, very difficult question to all kind of scientists, including statisticians, how far one can go and how far one must go, explaining the facts found in scientific work or in statistical work, explaining, simplifying the message to a certain degree without pretending to give instructions to politicians which are already on the political side. And so, and this is a question of learning. So sometimes in my personal life, I must admit that I have been going a little bit too far, a little bit only, but then I have learned over the years where to stop and to say, okay, this is the facts. I explain to you the facts. Please now, and this is more or less the message from the laboratory. And now comes the bazaar, and the bazaar has to work with the facts as they are communicated. And where the red line exactly is depending on the situation. It has to do with terminology. Sometimes even a word is political. So just give you an example. I have made a press release where we have used the word pesticide. And then the German agricultural lobby was heavily complaining, saying the word pesticide includes a value because, or insecticide includes a value, and you should talk about plant protection measures, which is neutral. And I said, no, plant protection measures is not neutral either. So you see, from time to time, it's a question of wording, because words include like facts, conventions, value, and opinions.
All right, thank you. Another question is, you talk about we need an increased cooperation between nations to compile statistics for a more global audience. What would be a suitable platform for that type of cross-national collaboration, would you say?
Well, firstly, the answer is relatively simple in Europe. Because as long as you are in Europe, Sweden, Germany, Italy could easily use the platform of European statistics because they are all together part of that system, which is a partnership already. So this is the answer, and I think quite meaningful solutions have been found already in this regard. When it comes to, let's say, economic production chains, which start, let's say, in Korea or in China, things are more difficult because then you have to cooperate with partners which are not elements of the same governance and legal system. But this also has to be done to a certain degree in order to really come up with global solutions. not to speak about migration flows, for example, from Africa to Europe, or biodiversity loss when we are talking about oceans, for example. So the biodiversity in the water ponds. There we have necessarily to work together, for example, in the Atlantic, let's say Norway has to work together with Canada and so forth. Clear.
All right. Another question from Sven Eivind Svan. It's an ethical question. If a hypothetical country decided to share the statistics of all its 1.4 billion citizens harvested by CCTV and other surveillance methods, should we use it? Yes or no?
Why? And another question: why should we not use it? If why should we not use it? So my first question is: what is the quality of this? Where is the ethical problem? Is the ethical problem that there is a breach of privacy? Is the ethical problem that we don't trust? So in order to be more clear, the ethical question needs to be decomposed into its, how to say, little elements. And then we have to go through it from our perspective. So the privacy question, the quality question, the, let's say, political correctness question, the possible corruption question, and so forth. And after that check, we have to say, okay, we do it or not. Apart from the financial question, whether we have to pay for it or not.
All right. Hilda, did you have a question? I noticed you unmuted your mic for a second. No? All right. Another question is, he says, thank you. Good answer to the ethical question. Another question, you mentioned Florence Nightingale at the start of your presentation, and one of her big contributions was that the visualization of data, making it easy to understand why you should do the things she proposed. What will the role of visualization play in the future when it comes to communicating data to the society in general?
Well, I think it's really impossible or hard to overestimate the role of visualization. It will be absolutely crucial. So in terms of communication, I think if you really want to reach out to many people who are not statisticians as in their profession and are not well trained, I think visualization is absolutely crucial. And I think we can learn a lot also from good journalists. We can learn a lot from meteorologists. I think those people in meteorology, they are excellent in their communication. And so whenever you look at the TV after the evening news, you see what they do. And I think we can learn a lot from them, explaining difficult, very complex things in such a way that people understand. We have achieved a lot over the last 15 years. I would say that European statistical offices were very innovative, but there is, in German one would say, Luft nach oben. There is still air to the, let's say, to the ceiling of this.
All right, and a follow-up question to that. You mentioned that it's going to be crucial to educate and teach statistics. Would that be a part of teaching statistics to the general population by that type of meteorology visualization?
Sure. And the first thing is that we also have to understand in a much better way what are the types of statistical skill that we have to deal with, and who is out there, and who is who needs which kind of skill. So my example is the following. Half a year ago, my daughter gave me a birthday present, and it was a kind of barista course. Barista is the producer of good coffee in Italy. So I made this barista course. What I learned is how coffee is produced, grown, the coffee beans are made, how it's roasted, what the machines do, and. But I am not a farmer for coffee. I am not a producer of a coffee machine, but I am at the end of this long production chain. And now I can produce a good coffee because I know all these production steps in the chain. And I think many people would need to have this kind of Statistica course in, let's say, in the school already, by using statistics in practical doing, in geography, in all kind of courses and classes, and not as part of a sub-branch of mathematics. So just doing, experimenting, make your graphs your own in your own way, use statistical algorithms, use original data, genuine data, and so forth. And I think this is my way of understanding. And then you have journalists who have to have different skills. You have politicians, and. So I think FENStatS is now currently opening a European statistical literacy project where we use a frame to decompose the different types of statistical and data literacy. And then we will develop curricula for the teaching of all this.
All right. Very, very interesting. I can't see that we have, oh yeah, hi. I just got one more question from Don Hedlin. I believe you implied that NSIs have not been as innovative as they could have been when you say that they have fought hard for independence and in the process perhaps become a bit conservative. Did I get that right? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, you got that right. So my long experience, including my own personal behavior, so shame on me. The problem for a manager or a responsible person in a statistical office is that you are more or less within the walls and the fortress of a legalized, highly legalized system, in particular in Europe. So the European Union has more than 300 statistical regulations regulating every bit and piece of every statistics. And if this is the case, then you could say you are overregulated. And overregulation, it's clear, it's not the friend of innovativeness and flexibility. So this kind of good intention to produce high quality has led to a kind of over legal, more or less machinery. And now whenever you have to want to adopt one of these regulations, you have to go back to the legislator. And can you imagine what happens if you go back to the legislator in Brussels? You have to deal with the council, with the parliament, and this is something which is not really friendly for innovativeness and flexibility. So I would say less is more. Let's have regulations which are less detailed so that we can use the flexibility over time. But this was, my message was very difficult to swallow by my colleagues at that time. So I hope I've given a proper answer.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Radermacher. following you, we will have Magnus Pettersson, who's been working with you at FENStatS to work out the accreditation for statisticians. And I do believe you have a question for Magnus. What is that question?
Yes, I have a question. Now let me read.
Yes.
Why should I apply, Magnus, why should I apply for an accreditation as an experienced statistician? Where is the expected benefit in this accreditation in for me? So what can I expect?
Excellent. That is a very, very relevant question. We hope that Magnus will be able to answer that one and several other questions regarding the accreditation that you will open up later this afternoon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we will do.
Very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Radermacher, for joining us.